and welcome to a new episode of Ramblings from Two Meddling Kids. I'm Edward Hunt, joined by my fellow mode of transportation,
Mike Cunningham.
And we are the Meddling Kids. And today we'll be reviewing planes, trains, and automobiles. See, you were wondering, what the heck was that guy saying? There's a reason for it. But for those of you joining us for the first time, hi, welcome. We like to review movies. For those of you who came back, you're our boys and girls and people. Love you. All right. From there, we'll never spoil anything in the first, let's call it 10, 15 minutes. Though, again, for this movie at least, it came out in 1980 something. So, maybe you know what planes, trains, and airplanes is all about, or automobiles is all about. But hey, but we'll never spoil anything in the first 5-10 minutes. Give it a 0 to 5 review. Then we'll give you some background and some play-by-play on everything. Mike, are you ready?
I am.
What did you think of this movie?
I think this is my first time seeing it.
Okay.
Like, I knew of it, but it wasn't really on my radar. I guess John Candy, outside of like Uncle Buck and his the moments he had in Home Alone, I really didn't pay attention to his career like that. Yeah. But I can see definitely why he was like, he's such a charming comedian, like definitely a good person or whatever. So it was just like, but yeah, this is my first time seeing this. I enjoyed it. I can see myself like watching this during the holidays. Yeah, I know you had mentioned before, like there's certain movies during the holidays your family just like cycles through just because of the fact that it is a staple to your tradition. So it's like, I don't know if this would be a staple, but it was like I could definitely see it being something I could watch or just revisit every year around this time. It was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed I guess they've done the Odd Couple thing to death now at this point, even though this is 1987. But it was just like I really enjoyed the presence between the two had the kind of the chemistry. It was interesting. It was very much a comedy that had a heart.
Yes, definitely.
Which is like we were saying earlier, it was like so often with comedy movies, the story really doesn't matter because they're just firing jokes at you or something like that. Yeah. So like they don't really focus on where this narrative is going. But I think I really enjoyed this one. I was this plane, trains, and automobiles, so it's about this road trip journey. Yeah. But even with that, they kind of added to that dynamic, know. So I really like that. So yeah, I'll give this one a 3. Okay. The reason I say a 3 was, like I said, I gave it all those. Yeah,
right. I thought you were going to be giving higher than a 3.
I might go into a 3.5. So what I will say was like the comedy was light. So like I guess judging it on that. So no, honestly, I might bump it to a 3.5 by the end of this. But it was like definitely a solid movie. Just kind of light on the comedy, but it was big on the heart. So I guess I enjoyed that. Yeah. So yeah, 3 with the chance to definitely go up.
Fair. Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. I wonder though, just is it light on the comedy because we're now in 2023? Like I bet in 1987, this was one of the funniest movies that came out that time.
I think the comedy that they, like John Candy's style with him being more nagging and that being the comedy of it, that kind of, that didn't draw me, right? But it was just like there was some other moments like with the when he has a fight with the guy at the airport and he was like help him up and he was like, oh, gladly.
Yeah, he just grabbed him. Yeah.
So it was like things like that. But like I said, I think the type of comedy that John Candy was doing in this movie was very much like you're more nagging, like kind of fidgeting and stuff like that, refusing to shut up, very much like a Vince Vaughn or something. Yeah. Not realizing the effect that you're having on people. That type of comedy really didn't draw me, but I think that's what I was saying. It was like light on the comedy, but maybe you're right. Yeah. I think it is oftentimes with some of the movies that I've watched that have been out for decades or whatever. I think I missed the fact that like a Psycho, when it came out, it was a revelation
exactly
for that time. But it was like it misses me now because we just saw things killing or whatever, or like Scream or Talk to Me or something like that. Yeah, that is the height of horror now.
Exactly. So they go in and
so just like watching something from the past really doesn't hit because I wasn't in that moment. Same thing like a Citizen Kane or something like that. It was just like I'm not in that moment, so it's some of the impact misses me.
Yeah, well, it's cool. I mean, with that, and we will go back to planes and trains, but like I just saw Vertigo recently. Oh, nice. In theaters. Me and my brother went and saw it. Okay. And really cool. But I mean, that movie came out in the 50s, right? And like revolutionary for its time, and like the crazy effects of like how are they doing this on film with all this like hypnotizing whatever stuff. But like you look at it and you're like, oh man, this is an old movie.
So the beauty of it, like especially Hitchcock, a lot of that stuff still holds up.
Yes. Oh yeah.
But it's just like at this point, you're talking damn near, 60 years later or something like that. It just really doesn't hold it doesn't hold a candle to what we've seen now.
Exactly. And then you look at effects. Like for instance, Vertigo, like the guy is tailing her, and he is right behind her the entire way. I'm like, how does she not know that he's tailing her? Like, come on, just like but little things like that. But no, it 100% holds up. But that's why when I see like older movies, and unfortunately, 87 is an older movie now. I do try to like look at
that lens.
With that lens,
that's what I really enjoyed, and we will get back to Planes, Trains, I promise.
Yeah.
But another Hitchcock film, Rope. I don't know if you've seen that one.
I haven't seen it. I've heard it. Yeah.
But so it was just like that one. It was like, I don't know if it was the first implementation of the single shot or whatever, but it was like, if you notice, like most of the scenes were like 11, 12 minutes like, shots. Okay. And then what they would do is they would zoom into the back, somebody's back, or to fade to black. So and that was the cut. Gotcha. They did it very much like a play because it was kind of in one setting. And I thought that, once again, we've seen the thing, Dunkirk or 1917 or something like that. Those movies, like trying to implement the single shot type of thing. But it was like that was back then he was doing it. And it was something so that one I did pick up on it. I was wondering why they kept doing it, and then I read into it, and it was like, that was interesting.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. 100% sorry for anyone that might be listening. I'm sorry that we're comparing a movie in the 80s to a movie from the 40s and 50s, but hey. But yeah. So with that though, I'm just going to give it a flat out 3.5. And like, I'm giving like a 3.5 to maybe even a 4. But I think I'm starting with a 3.5. We'll see how when we talk about it, because it has a lot of heart. And there are some very humorous moments, and Steve Martin, I think, is a great like straight man in this, and like him reacting and figuring out everything going on with John Candy, right? With his character and trying to figure that. Very funny with that. I do agree. Even from like other movies, it's not as funny as other. Like I'm thinking Airplane, like similar time frame. I'm pretty sure. But yeah, like. That's very funny. It's a little more heartfelt, a little more going forward with stuff. But it had a lot of had a lot of feelings with it. I will say one of my dislikes about this movie is that damn soundtrack. And it's funny because the director did all those like teenage heart
John Hughes.
Yeah, John Hughes.
16 Candles.
Exactly.
Breakfast Club.
Yeah. So like when he applies that same kind of music to these moments in this film, I'm like, what in the world is going on? Like when we'll get to it, but when John Candy's looking at Steve Martin's wife and it starts playing that music, I was like, did he just fall in love with her?
He was looking at her like, oh,
yeah. I know. And she looked back and it's playing the music. I was like, are they about to?
She was like, hey, Mr. Griswold, or whatever his last name was. I was like,
Griffith. Yeah. And I'm like, so
I was like, are y'all about to?
No. Seriously, I'm like, they're about to cheat on Steve Martin right now. Yeah, so that was like my most negative is like they played this and I was like, what in the world? But it's also funny. There's a lot of references to this movie in Family Guy. I remember like growing up watching that.
So one thing I will say is like watching a lot of I call older movies, the more classic movies, is seeing their influence in modern times and not knowing it. Right, I said the same thing. It must have been like maybe Platoon or Apocalypse Now.
Okay.
But it was like a scene that was recreated in Tropic Thunder.
Yes.
Yeah. And it was just like, I love to see how much people that work in the film industry love movies, right? Because obviously we love movies, but we don't work on that side. So imagine loving movies so much that it was like you actually get into the business. So it was like, I saw like they doing the mess around or even the speech.
Yeah, exactly.
The speech. And I was like, you trying to hurt me?
Yeah.
And I was just like, where the fuck do I know this from?
That's not from Family Guy, but you saw it in Family Guy.
But it was like, that's something I definitely, and I love seeing that now. Like, I watch older movies and it was just like, oh, this is where it started or something like that.
What's funny, actually, I was, I won't need to watch it because I've actually never seen it, but I was listening to the Cinephiles podcast. They're talking about Frankenstein, but a great point of like the mad scientist trope was invented in that movie. So like you watch it, and again, this is what they were saying. They're just like, oh, look at this. This is so like cheesy. It's the mad scientist trope. No. That movie invented it. It got cheesy because all the movies from there.
That's like the guy who did Dracula back in the day.
Yes.
Like, literally basically created the blueprint of how people portray Dracula going forward.
Exactly. So watching Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, it is really cool to see the influence this movie had on everything. And it might be partially because of that influence that I'm like, maybe this does deserve a 4. It does not deserve a 4.5. I'm giving it a 3.5 for right now because, again, I watched it the other day and I was like, there were parts where I was like, this is dragging a little bit. I wish this was grabbing me a little bit more.
I didn't laugh as much as I thought for a comedy.
No, yeah, there was not a lot of laughing out loud.
But I think it's also, going back to John Candy, I only know like 2 or 3 movies where he was a star in.
Yeah.
And it was like I guess his comedic style wasn't he wasn't Robin Williams, he wasn't Jim Carrey, like he was just himself.
Yeah.
So just like maybe that's just his style of comedy. He's not going to hit you over the head with the joke or something like that. It might be a face. It might be like a quick retort or something like that.
And it's definitely physical.
Yeah,
it's definitely more than that physical. But then like you could argue that like because of people like John Candy, then you also have people later like Chris Farley who took like that physicality to like the next level. And again, I mean, and Steve Martin's he's in so many funny movies too, and he's a very funny guy, but he does kind of play the straight man, I think, even more.
Yeah, usually, for the most part.
Yeah. Well, cool. So I'm giving it a 3.5. Mike's giving it a 3. We both might bump this up a little bit, but all in all, it's a good Thanksgiving movie, we'd say. It's definitely worth a watch if you've never seen it, because you're not going to dislike it. There might be movies you think a little bit better, but again, 3.5, especially for us, those are solid movies, everybody. So, hey. All right, let's get some background of this. I know we've already said a few things, but...
Okay, so Planes, Trains, and Automobiles came out November 25th, 1987. The runtime is 1 hour and 32 minutes. The budget,
easy.
The budget was $15 million, and the box office was $49 million, so it was a hit for the most part. Rotten Tomatoes has the critics at a 92, the audience has an 87. Okay. So like I said, I can definitely see this being something like your Christmas Stories, or like what It's a Wonderful Life, or like those movies during the holidays that you kind of revisit. Yeah, because as we researched, there's not too many focus on Thanksgiving.
Yeah,
the genre is comedy drama, and you can definitely see that they play it to both sides.
They play up the drama a little bit, a little too much maybe sometimes, but they play up the drama. Yeah.
Well, when he goes into you want to hurt me,
okay, fine. I like me. My dead wife likes me. Well,
it was funny because I was like, "What movie are we in?"
Yeah, like very sudden tone shift. Very sudden tone shift.
I think that goes to the music. The music did it.
Yeah, man.
But so the director is John Hughes, and like we said, he's directed big movies like 16 Candles, Breakfast Club, Pretty in Pink, Ferris Bueller, Uncle Buck. He was a writer for like a lot of the National Lampoon's movies.
You can definitely see some of that comedy.
Yeah. The cast, it's Steve Martin as Neal, John Candy as Del. We had a young Kevin Bacon early on as the taxi guy who stole the taxi, like he was racing.
Okay, yeah.
Edie McClurg as the agent at the car.
He was yelling at.
Yeah,
that was just mean. That was really funny.
I think that's what it was. One of those things where like I'm realizing that later in life. Like, so honestly, I think if I saw this when I was younger, I was like, oh, I'm definitely John Candy. I'm definitely Adele. Kind of lighter, always seeing the good stuff. And as I've gotten older, I was like, oh no, I'm definitely Neal. But I was like, I'm not a dickhead.
Yeah, I'm not that.
Like I'd be upset and like just trying to get home, but it wasn't I'm not cursing somebody else.
Yeah, I'm not going to curse out the poor innocent car rental woman. But yeah,
you have Layla Robbins as as Susan. That's his Neal's wife. And not too many. I think it was mainly just those two for the most part.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. It was them in wacky situations.
Yeah. And then the tagline is, which is surprising, but it's 1987. It says, Steve Martin had no reason to panic until John Candy came along. Okay. I'm surprised that they used their actual actor names in the tagline.
Well, and I don't know the history of Steve Martin, but Steve Martin's been acting.
Yeah, you're talking about Father of the Bride.
Well, I was just saying, like, he was a very prolific name by that point in time, so they're probably really trying to star
even
power.
SNL, stuff like that.
Absolutely.
But it was like, I feel like his name was on the poster. You didn't need it in the tagline.
Yeah, well, yeah. Like, but then you can argue too, like, they kind of did seem very much like themselves in this movie. It was like, these are the character names.
Well, that's what you were saying about like Steve Martin playing the straight man. I feel like that's just by default at this point. Like, I can't think of any movie where he wasn't that.
Yeah, it's like something's happening and he's reacting to it to go from there.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Cool.
But that's the background information.
Beautiful. Awesome. Thank you very much. So really this movie is all about just flying planes, driving cars, and trains, just constantly, just clips of it, right, Mike?
They did. Boom, boom, boom.
So how do we start with this thing?
So it opens up with Neal. He's an advertising exec or something like that. He's in a meeting, and you can tell like the meeting's dragging on. The guy's really contemplating the design that they're presenting. I think it's like a beauty product or something like that. Yeah,
it's our what's it called? Ad for Vogue magazine.
Yes. And so like you see him like looking at his at his watch, he's looking at the plane ticket. You see that he has a flight to Chicago at 6 p.m. Mm-hmm. Clearly, this meeting's dragging on. Like, so you get a few comedic beats with him, like looking at his coworker, like, "What the fuck is going on?
Mm-hmm.
Brought this up."
He's like, "I have a plane. I need to go."
And so they finally get out of the meeting. He goes to get on the elevator, and he's walking with one of his coworkers. And his coworker says, "You sure you don't want to just take the 8 p.m. with me?"
Yeah.
And he's like, "No, I promised my wife that I'd be there by 9." Mm-hmm. He's talking about in Chicago. And so he goes downstairs, and his coworker Sam was like, "There's no way you're gonna cast at 6 p.m."
He just cast a spell on that man. If that coworker did not say that, none of this would have happened.
But you put that on me, motherfucker.
You put that evil on me, coworker guy.
I believe his name was John, but yeah. So Neal goes downstairs to catch a cab in Midtown, midday, and literally you just see lines of taxis and so many people trying to catch a cab. And this is where you get the moment with Kevin Bacon. Mm-hmm. Like they look at each other, they see that the cab is available, and they start racing towards it. And then you see like Neal get caught up in the crowd, and then Kevin Bacon, and then like next you know Neal's just on the ground.
Yeah, he just like flips over something, trips on something. Yeah,
and Kevin Bacon gets the cab. He goes to hail another one. No, he hails another one. You see the guy is about to get into it, and he was like, if you're a good person, you'll let me, get this. And the guy goes, "Well, I'm not good.
I'm not. No. And I'm like, at least he knows who he is. That's what matters. All right.
Well, at that point in life, why lie to yourself?
And I applaud him for that. That is knowledge of the heart and who you are.
Well, yeah. So basically, Neal bribes him. He starts with $10, and it goes up to $50, and then he goes, "Well, if you're willing to pay $50, you're probably willing to pay $75."
Well, that was a great line. I'm like, oh man, this guy's the worst.
And he was like, "Oh yeah, I'm a lawyer." Like, that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
But as they're haggling for the price, you see that someone loads the trunk into the taxi, and then gets in right as Neal gives the guy the money.
Yeah.
And the taxi drives off. So Neal tries to chase it out. This is another thing. One other thing was like, what do you think is going to happen here?
Yeah, exactly. Right.
I get it. You're frustrated. You got a flight to catch, whatever. But it was just like chasing down a taxi in Midtown New York.
I'm impressed how fast he is. Man, it's fast.
It's it's traffic in New York.
That's fair, but
he wasn't going that far.
Yeah, I mean, hey.
But yeah, so he chases the car down. He opens the door and he sees it. He sees the guy that's in there.
Yeah, the look on his face, though.
Well, because some man just opened your taxi door.
That's fair.
What you mean? This is like, oh, this is it, Lord? This is how it ends?
Yeah, I'm going to die. Yeah.
But yeah, so we get a glimpse of Dell, and then the car just speeds off.
Yeah.
So eventually, I think he takes a bus or whatever, or a shuttle, and Neal gets to the airport, but his flight is delayed.
Mm-hmm. So he kind of looked out.
Yeah. And so he's sitting in the waiting area, and this is where he recognizes Dell. Mm-hmm. And then Dell's like, "You look familiar."
I know a face.
It was funny as shit because in the moment I'm just like, is he being an asshole?
Yeah, right.
Like, you just saw, maybe not just saw, I don't know how long the commute was to the airport. But yeah, so like they initially meet, and then the plane starts boarding. Neal has a exchange with one of the stewardesses because he had a first class ticket, but somehow it didn't, whatever ticket he has now says that he's in coach.
Yeah.
And this is another thing where you see that frustration, but I think I get the frustration, but I can't relate to his reaction.
He's like him taking it out on everybody like that? Yeah, that sucks.
That's what I'm saying. I literally just dealt with it. We just
because you're like, fuck it, I get it, it sucks, but like, you don't need to yell at like these smaller in between people. Yeah. Like they can't control any of this. But,
so his seat is ironically right next to Dell's, his best friend at this point. And so we see Dell has certain habits without hating certain people on a plane where he takes his shoes off, number one, which, okay, fine.
Yeah.
I sometimes, depending on how tight my shoes are, I might loosen them up because as far as like, like the restriction when it comes to flights. But it was just like, he also took his socks off. I was like, my man.
Yeah, a little much. Right there.
First of all, the flexibility to get down there. Because I guess those are planes in the 80s. Like,
they're big.
I feel like it looked like couches in there.
Yeah, the planes back then were big.
I just got off a plane to Unite, and it was like my knees were in my chest.
Yeah, exactly. No, I'm taking a Spirit flight coming up here, and it's like, oh no.
Oh, shit, I might have to get the fucking Miami.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, so they're on the flight or whatever. Oh, Jesus Christ! Sorry. They're on a flight.
You all right? Your appendix okay?
They're on a flight. They're sitting there, and Neal's a little bit in between Del and an older man, and they're both like leaning on him as they're on the flight, falling asleep. And at some point, he turns to his left where Del is sitting, and Del goes, $6. This flight doesn't make it to Chicago. And then what do you know? They get the flight gets not deflected, but like
redirected,
to Wichita,
Kansas.
Yeah. So now he's in Wichita. He calls his wife to give her a heads up, like because once again, like he was rushing home because he's obviously working in as an ad guy, like he's always on the road.
Yeah, well, I think too. Home. Yeah, it's like he's in New York a lot for this too, right? Yeah, and his whole family lives in Chicago,
so like he calls in just to check in with her, and then afterwards he tries to get a hotel room in Wichita since like all the flights are grounded. He won't be getting to Chicago that night, but all the hotels are basically booked up. This is where he meets up with Del again, and Del's like. Offers him, a room with him.
Very snooty. Dell's just like, see, I called first because I knew what the hell's going on. I'm like, all right, Dell, you got to relax a little bit there, pal. Like, you're coming off.
It's already one of those, like, people that's, like, doesn't recognize, like, social cues. Or just, like, you realize, like, if you're the only one talking, maybe shut the fuck up.
Yeah, that might be nice. Maybe a little bit.
This is not a conversation. You're just attacking me with words.
Exactly. Or, like, that's just not helpful. He's like, well, I called the hotel first. Like, okay, great. Thanks, buddy. Appreciate that.
But yeah, so they take a taxi to the hotel that Del booked, and Del's obviously been there a few times because he has a rapport with both one of the taxi drivers, and this is the one thing you'll learn about Del. I think maybe this is like a running bit or something like that, where it's like he just has a guy in every place, or whatever.
Well, when a man sells shower curtains, all right, which is a ridiculous job, all right.
You got to realize, I mean, there was a traveling salesman for vacuums at one point.
Like curtain rings, I don't think there were shower curtain ring salesmen. All right? Correct me if I'm wrong, but please.
The man had the inventory. What do you want?
True, yeah.
But yeah, so he has a rapport with the guy at the hotel. They, check in, and this is where you get, they switch credit cards.
Yes, by accident. Because they both have Diners Club. And
blah, blah. And they also realize that there's only one room with one bed. So now he's basically sharing a room with a stranger.
And Del is a messy man.
Yes.
It's awful. Jesus. 100%. That's when you said you related more to Neal or Steve.
Yeah.
I was like, 100%. I would also be very upset. Like,
especially because it's one of those things like trying to be just considerate of others.
Yeah, right.
Call me a human being. I apologize.
How are you going to use 5 towels? So you're going to use 5 towels yourself. Why is your underwear in the sink? What are you doing? Yeah.
But yeah, so they get into the room. Neal goes to take a shower, and what's his name? Del just gets comfortable. You see him take out a photograph of a woman, we presume to be his wife, and he's just smoking. He's like drinking beers and stuff like that,
putting trash and all the thing on the bed on the other side.
And this is where you get Neal getting out of the shower and realizing there's only one washcloth left to dry off.
Yeah,
and then the bathroom is just in a mess.
Yep.
He gets out, they go to lay down because, there's only one bed. What are you going to do? And because of I think it was like a massaging bed or something like that.
Yeah, massage bed, yeah.
And so now there's beer spilled all over the...
We didn't see that happen.
No, not at all.
Yeah, we just heard it. Because they're laying there and he's like, well, now he's laying in a puddle of beer because it's spilled. Yeah.
And then Neal is trying to go to sleep, and Del just having more quirks about him. We're just he's clearing his throat.
His sinuses.
And I'm just like, what? How are you not realizing how you're affecting the people around?
I do not blame Steve Martin for his reaction to this at all. It's ridiculous.
And so Neal, not being able to take it anymore, gets up, turns the light on, and starts getting dressed because he's just going to go sleep in the lobby.
Yeah.
And this is where he literally goes off on Del, and he was just like, your stories are boring. You realize maybe... it was a rant that went on a little bit long.
It was a long rant. It was a very long rant. That man went hard.
But you can tell he's frustrated with the traveling. He's frustrated with the fact that now he has this stranger that's kind of just tagging along, and he just lays into Del, and this is where you get the speech.
Yeah, the music.
It gets real dramatic, real melodramatic, and he was like, "You want to hurt me?
Okay, fine."
It's so funny because it does fit in this movie, obviously, because it's like I said, it's common. They do meld comedy and drama very well.
Yeah.
But it was just like, it kind of came out of left, because it was like, even the Breakfast Club had its like serious moments.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And like the tonal shifts.
Mm-hmm. But it made a little more sense of the Breakfast Club than here, I think, at times.
No, Dad, what about you?
Yeah, exactly, 100%.
I'm just like, years. Anyway, so yeah, Del gives a speech about it. It was like, yeah, you may not like me, and like you talk down on me, but my friends like me. I like me. My wife likes me.
Yeah.
And so, like,
for the record, the man says he's considerate or something in that speech. I'm like, you were clearly not considerate.
Yeah, I was like,
at all here. But okay, yeah. I'll get
so Del gives a speech, goes to lay back down. Clearly, because even when Neal is going off him, you just see kind of tears welling up his eyes. He's really taking it to heart what Neal is saying. And like, so Del goes to lay back down in the bed. Yeah. Neal, feeling bad.
Yeah.
He kind of takes off, like, as he was like putting on his blazer and his pants, he takes those off and he goes lay back down next to Del. And then we see a little bit later in the night that a guy breaks into the room and just robs them of all their cash.
Yep. Yeah.
And then they wake up the next morning. It was a funny little moment where like you see Big Spoon, Little Spoon between Del and Neal, and like Del kisses his ear.
He kisses his ear.
And then Neal realizes, like, wait a minute, I'm not at home with my wife.
He's like, what's going on?
He's like, why'd you kiss my ear? And he goes, well, why are you holding my hand?
Yeah, exactly.
So they just kind of get up and shake it off. And he was like, you see that Bears game?
That Bears game?
Trying to be a real man.
Very stereotypical.
And I think so that comedy like that, right? They have to try.
Yeah, you know.
But then they go to I guess breakfast or whatever.
Yeah.
And
we also find out, Neal's been paying for like everything this entire time.
Yeah,
at this point in time too. Yeah.
And so they go to breakfast, and then like Del mentions the planes are, even though because you saw that in the night there was like a parallel between Neal in the room with Del and his wife in her room alone. Yeah. And you hear on her TV that the airport's back up and running, and the flights will probably continue. Mm-hmm. But Del realizes that there are probably going to be a bunch of delays and stuff like that because everything's trying to get out. It's a holiday, and everything was shut down the night before, and so like they suggest maybe we'll take a train. Yeah, and so there is a brief time where it's like they think they robbed each other or whatever, but then they realize robbed. Yeah, like Neal's because he was like he goes to pay for Neal goes to pay for breakfast because he was like paying for everything else. Yeah, and he realized there's no cash in his wallet, which that's something I feel like it was $700. He said, that's something. It's a fat you could have. I was like, that's what you say, $700 in your wallet. This is why the pants are so elastic in the 80s because it was like you guys just got a big ass wallet. But yeah, so he's just like he says it was $700. It's gone, and Del feels offended. He was like, well, maybe a lot of things, but I'm not a thief. Yeah. And he goes, you can check my wallet. There's $200 and something in there. Any dollar over, you can call me a thief. Otherwise, I don't know what you're talking about. They realize they've both been robbed. Mm-hmm. And so they're sitting outside the hotel. They need to get to the train station. So the guy the hotel owner, who what's his name, who Del was cool with, has his son come pick them up. Yeah. And we get this disgusting exchange. His son has what is it? The chewing tobacco? Yeah. Chewing tobacco dip. Yeah. And so like he shakes Del's hand. Yeah. And then spits into his hand right before he shakes Neal. And I was just like, bro, I will walk. Yeah. I was like, fuck you, I'm out. Yeah, it was pretty gross. And then so they get in the back of his car, because he just has a truck. Yeah. Well, I like this exchange with his wife too. She's small and skinny, but she's strong. Yeah. Baby came out. Because he was like, they obviously Del has this trunk full of his the inventory, the merchandise. And so they go to lift it to put it in the back of the truck, and he feels insulted. Yeah. Like Gus's son feels. He was like, to his wife, he's like, "Can you get out and help them with that trunk?" And you see, she has a baby in her arm. Baby came out sideways, didn't even make a sound. Jesus Christ! But yeah, so they get in their truck. They drive they can't go to Wichita because Wichita doesn't have a train station. They can go to another town, which is a little bit further away. Mm-hmm. And it's it's winter time, I guess, because it's November. Yeah. And so like they're just freezing their asses off in the back of the truck. And this is another funny moment. It was just like they finally get to the train station, and like both Del and Neal are frozen, and so is the dog. That was yeah. And so Neal gets them train tickets, but he says that they weren't able to get in the same car. But I'm pretty sure that's totally could have. Yeah. And then so they go their separate ways. Neal tries to get Del tries to get Neal's information. He was like, no, we won't see each other again. We're good. Yeah. So they get on the train breaks down.
Of course.
Of course.
Yep.
Because we haven't gotten to an automobile. Oh, we have been in an automobile.
But we need more automobiles.
Yeah. So the train breaks down, stranding all the passengers in the middle of a field. So now they need to walk to get to a bus.
Yeah.
To get to a bus station. And this is where we see a nice moment between Neal and Del, where like Del is having struggling with the trunk.
Yeah.
And Neal goes over and helps him carry it the rest of the way. So they get on a bus.
Neal's not a total dick all the time.
Not all the time. He has his moments.
Yeah, for sure.
And so they get on a bus. But what's his name? Del tells Neal that, the bus is only going to St. Louis. But from there, like we'll figure something out.
Yeah.
And so on the bus, you get a lighthearted moment where like Del was like livening people up with music, and this is where you get the kind of the more straight-laced Neal, where they try to get him to sing a song, but whatever song he's singing, nobody knows.
No one knows the song he knows, and he's just like, "Come on, everybody, come on!" Yeah.
But yeah, so they get to St. Louis. Sorry, one second. Oh, they get to St. Louis, and now Del starts selling
the rings,
the shower rings, to get some cash.
The man is a salesman.
Yes.
Say what you will about Del, he's a liar, because he's just like, check out this shower ring.
It's not being a salesman.
Yeah, fair. He's like, Queen such and such, he wore this.
Yeah, these are ivory and so whatever.
Yeah.
But he makes enough money so they can get something to eat, so they can get lunch.
Yeah.
And kind of go on about the way we're trying to figure out what they're going to do. So they're having lunch, and this is when Neal tells him, he was like, it's probably easier if we just separate.
Yeah.
Traveling with two people is real difficult.
So hard. Yeah.
And Del gets offended, and he tries to, pays for lunch, and he tries to give him some cash, but they go their separate ways.
Yeah.
Neal tries to get a car.
Boy, does it.
But, Jesus Christ. But when he gets to the lot, whatever car that was assigned to him isn't there.
Yep.
And there's nobody at
and the person that dropped him off at the lot is gone.
Yeah.
So he's stranded.
And so now he needs to walk back to the airport, which he said was like 3 miles, over the highway and stuff like that, all on the fucking the tarmac
and you see the ice and snow. He's slipping and sliding all over the place.
And so once he gets to the airport, his shoes are in shambles.
Yeah.
And he goes up to the rental car person, just to get a new car. But he mainly just vents to her, like cursing her the fuck out.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Just
and she's like, I don't like I don't like the language you're using. And he was like, just give me a fucking car. She goes, where's your
rental agreement?
And he was like, I threw it. And she was like, well, you're fucked.
Yeah. And she was like, well then, fuck you too, buddy. Yeah. I'm like, that's kind of what you get.
That was exactly one of those things. Like I feel like I said, I understand the frustration of travel. Yeah. But customer service didn't do this shit to you.
Yeah. 100%. And if he had just been like, whoa, this was really shitty, blah, 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 I lost the rental car agreement on the way, I bet she would have been a hell.
But I do think you noticed, I think early on, or maybe it's a little bit later, that Del mentioned that he has like a bit of a temper and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You see it in these moments.
Absolutely, yeah.
But like I said, I think you can also relate to the frustration. I mean, you're traveling during the holidays.
Absolutely.
Right? Like you constantly getting deterred from your ultimate, destination. So the frustrations are building. Like we've all been there in those moments, but it was just like how you react to it.
For sure, 100%.
And realizing where to focus that anger and that ire.
Yeah.
But yeah. So he goes to leave the airport to try to get a taxi from they were St. Louis, right?
I think so, yeah, something like that.
St. Louis to Chicago.
Jesus Christ.
And
that's an expensive taxi.
And he gets into a little bit of, he starts, once again, he was just yelling at the rep at the car rental place, and now he's yelling at one of the guy who's running the taxi.
He did not learn his lesson.
And he did, and he gets punched directly in the face.
As he honestly kind of should. Yeah, fair enough.
And then he falls into the street, and the car is coming, and luckily it stops right before it. It crushes him, and in his daze, he just sees Del standing over him.
Guess who's back?
And it was very much like, this is where like, are you fucking with me type of thing? Because it was like, now he's in like a fucking like a cardigan, and he's like, oh my god, sir! And it was just like, are you fucking with me? Like, it's one of those things where like, it'd be like a Fatal Attraction or something like that. But this guy's been fucking with with you like in secret, but like. And to the rest of the world, he's just like a very lighthearted person.
Yeah.
And like that's what it was giving me, even though we know that's not him.
Yeah,
it was like very much giving me like a Two-Face type of thing. But it was just like, so he Del demands that he was like, I'll move my car. But he's like, you help him up.
Yeah,
and this is the funny thing.
An injured man here.
Yeah. And so the guy who punched Neal goes, oh, gladly I'll help him up, and literally grabs him by his crotch and just makes him.
Oh. Ow.
And it was the funniest thing. It was like the reaction. So now they're now they're back together. They're driving, and one of the first things Del says is like, "I've never seen somebody grabbed by their crotch before.
Get picked up by their balls before, or whatever." Yeah.
And it's like, once again, these are the funny moments.
Absolutely. And Neal's voice is all like
very high.
Yeah. He's like, "Yeah, you can say that again." Yeah.
But yeah, so now they're driving, and you get them like, and this is where I say some of the John Candy's comedy didn't work for me. So like, John Candy started driving, obviously they're taking turns doing certain legs of the trip, and when Neal is driving, Del is in the seat, obviously in the passenger seat, and he's like fucking with it, trying to get to like the right spot. And then he was like, so he gets to the right spot, and then he's like, "Oh, I can't take my shoes off." And he was like, "Don't take your fucking," and it was just like. But it was just like very much like him like leaning over, very much trying to be annoying. Yeah. And it was just like, oh, this comedy doesn't work for me. Okay. This is very much like trying to draw out a laugh. And it was like sometimes physical comedy does work, but I think as I've gotten a little bit older, it's like it's very few and far between. Like maybe a fall or a trip now and then or something like that. Or even like
maybe when someone gets hit in the nuts, that's what I'll really.
And I'm just like, oh, that is peak.
Exactly. That is excellent. To find vintage.
But so when it's Del's turn to drive again, Neal takes a bit of a nap, and you see that Del's obviously also a little bit tired. Yeah. He crashes at one point, and then like
he blames it on a deer.
Yeah.
You see the mess around scene at this point.
Oh yeah, and this is where like he's like smoking a cigarette, listening to music. I'm trying to stay awake, and so like he's like playing the piano on the dashboard.
That's a great scene.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I love seeing scenes that I've seen referenced later on.
Absolutely,
I've seen the origin of it.
Yeah.
And it was like, that was really dope. Because it was one of those things I'm sitting there like, I know that from somewhere.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
100%. Yeah. It is just a great piece of it's just awesome. Yeah. Like, very well done on his part for sure. Yeah.
And so at some point, like, he kind of falls asleep, crashes a bit, and blames it on a deer. And you see him continuing his trip, and he's going the wrong way.
Yeah, he's going wrong. Yes.
And so, like, in the distance, even though he doesn't see it, we see two trucks coming towards him, and then there's a guy who's in the right lane trying to get his attention to tell him that he's in the wrong lane. And like, he's just like, oh, that guy's drunk. Yeah, he doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about.
That's everybody. He's like, oh, boozing. Okay, buddy.
And then like Neal wakes up at this point and he's just like, what the fuck is going on? But he was like, he can't speak because he sees the trucks coming.
Yeah.
They, do the Fast and Furious. Which I'd see Fast and Furious rip this off. Nothing original with those films.
Nothing's original anymore. All right. It was all done in the 80s.
But they literally squeeze in between the two trucks. The windshield, not windshield wipers, but the mirrors.
Oh yeah,
the side mirrors get knocked off or whatever, and they're like, really, they're shocked. He brakes really hard, and the trunk goes flying. Yeah, and so he finally decides to pull over to the side so they can get there, catch their breath.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Earlier too, Del was smoking a cigarette and kind of fell in the back seat, and it's even like making the car hot or whatever. But
that's what he was saying. It was like that's what happened when he was like when he crashed the first time, he was trying to take off his coat.
Yes.
Because it was hot.
Because it was hot in there. He didn't fully know why. Well, the cigarette was in the back burning shit. Yeah.
And so, like, they stop, they get out of the car to go retrieve his trunk. Yeah. And then the car gets set on fire. Yeah. And then also, we find out that,
Neal liked it. Neal was like, thank God something bad happened to you.
Yeah, because he's like, it's his car. Yeah. Like, Del rented the car. Yeah. And then Del goes, well, actually, somehow your Diners Club car ended up in my wallet. He was like, so why did you stole it? He was like, no, I didn't steal it. He was like, I thought you put it there. And I was just like, oh, you did.
Why would I ever do that?
Yeah, I thought you put it there. Yeah. Fuck you, bro.
Yeah, no. And he was like, I was going to get it. That's why I needed your address.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And then he was like, well, give it back. And he was like, well, actually, when we were at the gas station, I slipped it back into your wallet. And then we turned and see that his wallet and all that stuff is still in the car that's on fire.
And it just burst into flames. Yeah.
And so once the car has stopped burning. Once the fire has ceased, they get in it for some reason and continue to drive it.
Still drives. It
drive it to a motel. And then they go to get a room. And he's like, well, we'll need your credit card. Yeah. And he pulls out all his cards and they're just charged.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, I'll pay with cash. But he only has $17. And so, like, the guy's like, well, I can't help you. So he's like, I got $17 and a nice watch. Yeah. And then he pays for his room because it was about $42 or something like that for the night. And so Neal gets his room, goes off, parks the car, and then goes into his room to kind of get settled.
Yeah.
And then Del goes to get a room, but he was like, I don't have $42 either. Yeah. Like, I got $2. He was like, do you also have a nice watch? Yeah. And so we see that.
Does not.
Yeah, he doesn't. So the guy turns him away. Del has to sleep in the car, which obviously it was on fire. So like
so there's no top.
There's no roof. The doors are really
yeah.
And so he's sitting there and he's in the car, kind of huddled up as much as he can, and he's talking to his wife Marie, and he was just like, "You were right, I am." And I think this is a bit of self-reflection and stuff like that. It was just like, I meet somebody, but it was like I'm too. Like I guess too aggressive, and it was just like I'm pushing them away.
Yeah,
like what type of idiot am I? You definitely see, and I think this was nice to see, just in general, because there's so many people that sometimes are oblivious to their impact on people outside of themselves.
For sure.
So it's nice to see like at least a little bit of introspection. I'm just like, okay, maybe I see my faults in some of this, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And then you see Neal in the room, and he's like,
yeah,
I can't just let these And then once again, you see this is the beauty of it. Like I said, there was like usually comedies don't give you this.
Fair.
Because they're too busy trying to make you laugh a mile a minute or whatever it is, so they don't lean into the story or the character building. But it was just like you do see these moments of Neal. Yes, he's an asshole.
Yeah, for sure.
But he does have a heart. So
exactly.
He's not going to let this guy who's been annoying him from fucking New York all the way to wherever the fuck they are now. He's not just going to let him freeze out in the cold. So he invites him in.
Yeah, because like Neal has a temper, but at his base level, he's a good person.
Yeah. And so he invites Del into the room, and they have this bonding moment. They're like drinking from the bar.
Del has a bunch of like mini bottles or whatever like that.
So they're drinking and they're catching up, and you do get to see this lighter side between them.
Yeah.
And
throughout this entire time, Del's been talking about his wife. And he let slip like he was like, "Oh, I haven't been home in years."
Yes,
or,
he did mention that. He mentioned that at lunch or something.
Yeah, at lunch. So he mentions that. He mentions is like, my wife, I love her, and then I have nothing to show for it. But then Neal is like, well, you have a woman who loves you.
You have a woman who loves you, and you see a bit of reaction on
because once he does, he kind of goes to the bathroom. He's like, well, time to go to bed. And goes to the bathroom.
And so they the next morning. They have to dig the car out of the snow. Yeah. And they're driving along and they get stopped by a cop because clearly they're driving the burnt out husk of a vehicle.
The fuck this is. Yeah.
And I think Del trying to be his charming self was just like trying to get out of this ticket. But the cop is like, bro, like, no. You think this car is like road safe?
Yes, sir, I do. I absolutely do.
Now that you ask,
yeah, for 100%. Sure. The radio works.
Right. And so the car gets towed. But immediately you see that what's his name? Del is able to finagle them a ride on a truck.
Yes. Yeah.
But they can't ride in the in the cab. They have to ride in the back. And so because of this, they're able to finally get to Chicago. They get they go to a subway station or a train station.
It's a train station or whatever. Yeah.
I've never been to Chicago, so I don't know what it's referred to.
I think everything's made of pizza. Just deep dish pizza.
You mean that lasagna?
Yeah, deep dish pizza.
I'm not putting Chicago on blast. I apologize.
I saw WrestleMania in Chicago when I was a kid. It was a great place. I need to go back now that I'm an adult.
And so they go their separate ways. Yeah. They wish each other happy holidays. He says, Tell Marie, happy holidays for me, or just, happy Thanksgiving. And so while Neal is on the train, he's sitting reminiscing about the trip, right? The first meeting Del at the, in the taxi, and then certain moments like him yelling at him and kind of feeling bad about it. Then he kind of remembers certain things that were said during this trip about Marie. Yeah. About I haven't been home in years. Or, or he even flashes back to that reaction when he said about, at least you have a woman that loves you. Yeah. And I think he realizes, there's something that he didn't tell me. Yeah. And so he gets off the train, he runs back to the train station, and this is, because Del is still there for some reason. Yeah. And he says, what's going on? And he says, he admits that Marie's been dead for 8 years.
Yep. Yeah. And he doesn't have a home. Yeah. He doesn't have anything. Yeah.
And so, the next scene you see them carrying his trunk through Neal's neighborhood. Yeah. And they end up at his house and he was like, I promise I won't stay too long. And he's like, just shut up, just come in. Yeah. And so finally Neal makes it home. He introduces Del to his family. Like I think his dad's there and his in-laws are
and
there.
His kids are there.
Kids.
Like 2-3 kids.
Yeah, because he had missed his daughter's like Thanksgiving recital and things like that. That's why he was trying to rush home.
Yeah.
And so finally, his wife like hears him, in the foyer or whatever. So she comes down the stairs. And this is the moment
the weirdest fucking reaction I have ever seen.
Because it was very much like, this is a different. It seemed like the start of a different film.
Yeah, man. Because she sees fucking Del and she's like, oh, who's your friend? And I was like, what the fuck is this? And because the music's playing.
I just leaned over to myself and was like, I think they got the fuck.
I know, right? I'm like, what the fuck? It's like, they're just like, I've realized I've found my soulmate. Get out of here, Neal. I was like, so weird. I did not like it.
But it was just nice to see finally Neal gets to, greet his wife. Yes. And also you see that Del gets to spend the holidays with the family, with friends.
Fuck, looking at his wife like that, and that's how it fades to black, doesn't it? It ends with that.
That's it. That's just like talking about this movie is quick. Like I feel like that was 7 minutes of credits, unless there was like a post credit scene.
So I read on Wikipedia there is a post credit scene, but I was like, see it.
I saw because it was like you were here, but I was just like I was wondering why I was like 7 minutes left.
I don't know what the post credit scene is, but I've heard there is one.
Apologies, guys.
Let us know what it is. We'll probably watch it, but I have no idea. But yeah, so that is Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. We always, at the end, like to do two things. One, Mike, was there anything we missed? Like any likes or dislikes in particular?
No, I got mentioned, like I said, I really enjoyed the chemistry between the two. Mm-hmm. It was, once it's the odd couple, so it's always the straight man and the more free person.
Yeah.
But I think this played really well. I think I'm going to... No, I'm sorry. I think I enjoyed the heart that was brought in this film.
Yeah. Well, let's just kind of change it. So, from there, your original ranking was a 3 out of 5.
Yeah. I think I'm going to boost it up to a 3.5, because I'm going to allow it to be more of a drama than a comedy. Fair. And in that light, it hit those beats.
Yeah.
Because even, like I said, it was like one of those things where, like, you couldn't even tell. Like, I guess there was a bit of foreshadowing, and that's what's interesting in storytelling. I feel so often now, they really let you know this will come back later, type of thing. It was just like, there's something not right with the stuff, but you never got that.
Yeah, for sure.
In this movie until the end, until like Neal had to go back and be like, wait a minute, something he said, like there was hints, but it wasn't really like laid out for you. So I can appreciate that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so I think I'll give it a 3.5.
Okay,
because it was light on the comedy, but very much heartfelt.
Yeah. And hey, we chuckled a fair amount while we were talking about it. So yeah. So with that, I'm going to stick with my 3.5. I don't think it deserves to necessarily go up to a 4. I agree with there's a lot of really good things with this movie. God, thinking about that final scene with the music honestly upsets me a little bit. I'm just like, what in the world happened here? Yeah. I'm like, should I leave the room? Like,
it was just like, why is she unbuttoning her shirt?
Yeah. What's going on? Hello there, Mr. Griffith.
Exactly. It was like an angelic thing over the lid.
Yeah.
Of her coming down the stairs.
Yeah.
And then it was like, hello, Mr. Griffith. I was like, first of all, you calling him by his first name?
Yeah.
My mama don't call me by my last name.
Maybe she was just so pumped that Neal made a friend. She's like, fuck, baby, the man. She was like, you have a friend. She hates
his coworker.
Yeah, exactly.
She's like, fuck that guy.
Yeah. But yeah, so definitely there are some pretty funny parts with here. It's a very solid movie. I'm going to call it a classic too. So I'm sticking with a 3.5. But yeah, again, thank you so much for listening, everybody. We are the Two Meddling Kids, and happy Thanksgiving. If you'd like to reach out to us, you can find us at Two Meddling Kids on Twitter and Instagram, or you can email us at twomeddlingkids@gmail.com. Mike, how can I reach out to you?
On Instagram at Days from Legendary.
Awesome. If you'd like to reach out to me, I am at EdHunt77 on Twitter and Instagram, and Hunt.comics on Instagram as well. I realized I forgot to do my normal ad things. Remember, everybody, I'm a real estate agent. I'm writing comics. I've been selling some of the comics to comic book stores locally in DC. Really pumped about everything. Check it out on Global Comics too. But anyway, we'll be back next week with a brand new movie. Not comic. With a brand new movie. Thanks, everybody. See you soon.
Bye. Yeah.